catch up with the recording. So, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about the new upcoming automation workflows feature that's being added into the CRM. This is currently in preview, so this is something I believe you will be able to try out right now in the CRM. Following this, you can go and enable this feature and have a play around with it yourselves and hopefully get to grips with it. So, I'm your presenter for today. I'm Xander, CSM. I may have spoken to some of you before. If not, it's very nice to meet you. And let's get right in. So today's plan, we're going to learn how we can use automation workflows to go through automating information with quotes, opportunities, and problems to try and reduce manual admin. Now, you may have had some experience in the past using the quote chase tool that's in the CRM, automatically following up on quote emails. So this is sort of a follow-up on that. It's a further expansion of that feature with more ways to customize those quote chase emails and how you set those up, as well as very similar features built in for opportunity and problems at the moment, and some new ideas that will be coming in future versions of other ways that we can configure this to set up. We're going to take a look at how workflows can help streamline processes by making things just happen automatically and consistently, rather than relying on a potential human error. We're going to see how we can actually set these up, as well as how we can just make sure that they're going out at a timely manner, automatically on these scheduled ways, and how we can configure those to send out certain emails. So it basically just could be walking through it, going through a lot of configuration steps for this, and showing you how the best, a couple of example use cases that you could use to set these up, and how we would recommend using it, and other changes you can make. We have a little Q&A at the end, so any questions that you've got, drop them in the chat or do them in the Q&A box, and I'll answer those right at the end. So I'm going to crack on now with our little demo. So first things first, to enable this feature, you're going to have to go into System Settings and enable the Automation Flows preview feature. So this is effectively what we need to get going. It has a link here to configure the automation flows, and once you've got this turned on, if you refresh your page, you'll see this little automation button in the bottom left here in settings as well. So if we go into this, we're going to see a bunch that's been created on this this test profile, but I'll make a new one right now and we'll start walking through it. So I'm going to do some of the new ones first, and we'll come to the quote chase sort of towards the end of how we can do that. So there's 5 different options now for automations that you can create in the CRM for when an opportunity is closed, created, same thing with a problem when it's closed or created, and then we've got the quote chase that you may be familiar with. So we're going to go through an example here, just one of the demos I'm going to do on an opportunity being created. So there'll be a sort of a new lead coming to the CRM that you'll want to email maybe the customer, let them know you've got it, as well as set tasks in the CRM for users to get in touch with these customers. So we're going to call this new hot lead. So it's just been created in the CRM. And now this is going to prompt us to filter our opportunities. So this is just like the report builder, if you're familiar with that as well. It's going to recommend any filters you might apply. So you may want this automation workflow to only go out for opportunities of a certain status or from a certain source. So it could be that, if you've gone to a trade show, or if you've got these people filling out a form or emailing in to create this opportunity, you may want it to be only filtered to that source. For this demo, just to make sure we've got data in it, I'm not going to add any filters. But much like the report builder, you could go in here and add a filter. So, obviously source as a good example, you may need to click show more and find the source of the opportunity. And you may say that you only want it to be from an e-shot or an email marketing campaign, for example. We're going to remove that for now and create this workflow. So we've got our new hot lead workflow. If you change your mind on any filters that you want to do, you can click this filter opportunities button here and go back and change that. And we've got a little guide here as well to sort of walk us through it. So if you do need a refresher and don't want to watch this back, then hopefully this can help along the way as well. So first of all, what would we like it to do upon creating, upon this new opportunity being created? In this case, we want to let the customer know that we've got this opportunity. And so we're going to send them an email to let them know that we've got it. So in here, we're going to pick an email template that's already been made. So in here, we've got one I made earlier. This should be a new inquiry email. Here we are. But any email template that you've made in the CRM, you'll be able to select from these lists. So obviously this, much like our other email templates, that's going to be populated with merge fields. As well as if we go into the settings here for sorry, not the settings here for this email. This is going to go out to the parent contact of the target record using the email template, just for who it's going to send to. So it's going to populate that to address for this opportunity, as in the contact that's under. That makes sense. And then it's going to use those merge fields that you've got on that email template to pull any information from that opportunity record and send that off to the customer. So I think in this example, we've got information such as the customer name, or the contact name that you can add in to sort of address the person automatically, much like you can with a regular email template now. So we can continue on from this, we're not just sending them an email. We can add a tag to the record. So in this case, we'll want the target to be the opportunity itself. So if we just click the opportunity here, so it's a little different from how you normally, in this sort of menu, and we'll click save, and then we'll select the tags that we want to add. So in this case, I've just created a hot lead example just for this demonstration. But if you're familiar with tags and have this feature set up, you can create new ones or reconfigure these so these can be automatically applied and you know that they're separate from the rest of your data. So in this case, we're going to be tagging these new opportunities as hot leads so that our account managers know these are fresh opportunities that we've just got and that they're going to need to be actioned as soon as possible. So what we can also do to this, just to make sure those users are aware, is that we can add a new task as well. So we go in, we can name this task, and also with this little button here, we can insert fields from the opportunity. So as an example, I'll say follow up with, and then click on this opportunity field, we can get information such as the contact's name. So if we search this, again, this is if you're familiar with the merge fields on the emails, works the same way. So if we sort of may have searched too much here, but here we go. So we can search for information based on the contact. So if we want to get the contact's name, it's just giving me contact ID here, probably because I've put a space at the end. We are. And so we can get information from the contact here, and I'll try and find the contact name. Maybe if I just search forename, there we are, contact first name, it's got contact.forename. And if we say at, and then we can get the division name as well. Search name in here and we get company name, just called division name in the system settings here for the merge field. And if we just close out of this, so it's now going to send that task, it's going to send this task to a user in the CRM. It's going to say follow up with the contact who this opportunity is under, at, and then their company name, just to give a little bit more personalization to the task. Obviously, you could just say follow up, and the person who's going to click onto that task email is going to see what the record's for. And then we've got to select our user that this is for. And again, we could select this to be the salesperson for that customer. So it's going to automatically go to whoever the salesperson is for that company, rather than it being set to a certain user. We could go further in this and add more information, but we'll sort of elaborate on what we can do with other changes on the other examples I'm going to do for this demonstration. This is just an example of how we can sort of create an opportunity workflow. And in this process, as soon as it's created, in this case with no filters, it's going to email the customer using information from the opportunity, add a tag to the opportunity, and then create a task for the certain user in the CRM using information from that record. So now we're just going to save this workflow here. And then if you need to make any changes in the future, you can go back and edit it, or you can create a draft version rather than editing the live workflow. So, and then with the versions and the run history on the side, you can see when any changes are made. So if we go through and make any changes, we'll have different versions and different drafts that are kept, as well as the run history. When it's actually triggering, you'll be able to see this here and which emails and when those emails were sent out. We're going to go and create another example here now, this time for a new problem being created. So similar to the last one, that's problem closed, or problem created. We're going to go in and say, new technical problem. And much like the last one, we're going to want to let the customer know that we've got this, and we might want to filter this down as well. So in this case, we've got our type 1 on these problem records is technical. So we could add a filter here so that the type 1 on our problem records, we scroll down, is technical, so that we're only wanting to send this out for these technical issues. It may have been obsoleted on this test one. It's still going to work for this demonstration. It may be that you don't want to send these emails out to customers with delivery-related problems or product-related problems. So in this case, these are technical issues that have happened with the products in this test account. So we'll create that now, just to sort of demonstrate how that feature works. So much like last time, we can add in an email to go out, and same again, going through the motions here, we're going to have that same list, and we can go to this problem acknowledgement. Again, very similar situation. It's going to go through and do that. Again, we can go through and add an email, that email and a tag. So we'll go through similar process here. If we select to tag the problem, and again, we can pick a new tag, sort of new problem, go through, add that in. You may want to add a task to the contact as well. This could be that you've got a technical person on your team. In this case, let's go select a dealer and say that that technical person is always going to receive these tasks coming from these new problems. They're the person who's going to address this. You don't need to populate it from the salesperson. They're not going to be of most help. You might want to send it to a certain member of staff. And again, here we can just say sort of investigate and then get the description from the product field to go in. So it's just going to pull whatever description has been entered on that product field and add that into the task. If we've got a technical issue, it's obviously something we're going to want to address for the customer as quick as we can, but we may want to, chase this this contact that we've got on our side, our user, further. So we could add a delay that's going to wait a certain while before we reach out, before we perform another action. So in this case, we're just going to do 2 days. And then we're going to add a webhook here. So we don't have one configured for this test profile, but if you go into the configuration here, it's going to walk you through some of the steps using the basic URL authentication that you may be familiar with through our other configuration of webhooks. And we could have a webhook, for example, something that sends a message via Microsoft Teams. And so we could have a unique webhook URL, an example for this, and set up that API request as well as the username and password that you need to authenticate this. And obviously, you can populate that from the problem fields as well if that's necessary. So we could message the user on Teams in this example, letting them know which problem that we need them to look at for this example. Hopefully that will make sense. Obviously, there is an awful lot you could do with these webhooks. If you were familiar enough with the configuration or had webhooks already set up yourselves, you could use these with the automation workflows to have them trigger automatically upon certain conditions. And lastly, I'm going to walk through the quote chase automation processes and sort of how that's changed a little from how it is at the moment. So I'm just going to call this quote chaser. And so first up on this time, rather than selecting which filters to filter these records by, it's going to ask us which templates it wants to be triggered by. So it's going to be when you're sending certain emails from a quote, this is then going to trigger when that email has been sent. So in this case, we may want an order confirmation email, classic, and an email cover for PDF quote. So this is going to be an order confirmation if it's being sent as an email, and the email cover is going to be if it's being sent as a PDF. So obviously you can cover your bases. You can go through and select all the different quote emails that you'd like, just to make sure that these are sending out, whichever's best for your configuration. So unlike the other examples, we're not going to want to send this email right away. We're going to want to have that delay on so we can have a wait. And let's say we want to wait 3 days before we chase up with the customer. And again, we can go and create a follow-up email. So in this case, we could have a follow-up email. So this is I think I've made a quote chase follow-up. So just going to use Matthew's one here as an example. So it's going to populate with this quote chaser. In this case, as he's done in this example here, it's quote chase one. And again, we may want to reach out to the customer, really make sure that they get this sale. So it's going to wait 3 days. It's going to send them an email. We may want to wait another period of time after that. So we can say, well, let's wait another 5 days and then have a second email configured to reach out to them again. So with this, it's going to send the first email. It's going to wait more time. It's going to send the second email. And then if we're still not hearing anything back from them, you can go in and say the same thing that we've done on other examples and go and add a tag. So you select the tag on the quote. We don't have one in this example, so you can create one right here, and we can just say sort of needs attention and create that so that if we've sent all these emails to the customer, we've emailed them on the quote, we've confirmed their order, we've chased them twice, and they've not gotten back to us. We can tag the quote that it needs attention, and we can create, as we've done the last couple of times, a follow-up task as well. So, much like last time, say sort of urgent, and then as we've done before, go in and add information such as the company name. It's just giving me quote fields here, but we can get the company name out. So it's going to chase out to them, and just put in that. Just call this a quote follow up. And much like we did on the first time, assigning this to a salesperson is probably going to be the best way to go. So following this workflow, when we send an email from a quote with the order confirmation or email cover for PDF quote, it's going to wait 3 days, send an email, wait 5 days, send another email, and then if there's still, if it's still triggering, it's going to tag this and then add this task in the CRM. So if the customer reaches out and replies to the quote for quote chase emails, if they reply, I believe it's going to stop sending. Um, if the customer confirms the quote, not just if they reply, but if they confirm the quote through the CRM, it's going to stop this process, as that's just how the quote chasers have been configured. Um, but as it stands, the automation pipelines for the problems and the opportunities will continue if there is a customer reply, because generally those are going to be set up for internal communication. But obviously, your use case may differ, and you may need to disable it for that certain record if somebody reaches out. So there's obviously the use case for automations to create an automation for when an opportunity is closed. You may want to let people know internally, this has been closed. You may need to let your finance team know. Similarly, for a problem closed, you may just want to send out a form. Let's say we've closed a problem that a customer has launched. You may want to have it so that it's the status is only when it's been closed successful. You may want it to automatically send out an email with a little a form for them to fill out to an NPS form or something along those lines. But those are the three I'm going to demonstrate today. Um, if anyone's got any questions about this feature, now would be the best time to fire away, and I'll do my best to answer them. And the quote chaser workflow will be triggered on the pipeline stage. So when a mover uses the opportunity to quote submitted, it'll create this automated workflow to remind them to chase up in 14 days. So at the moment, Matt, there is no way for it to be on status change. It'll be only on when certain emails are sent from a quote. So it could be, like you mentioned on that pipeline stage, but it would need an email to be sent for that to go through, uh, for that to process to trigger. I believe we do have plans to implement it so that status changes will be able to trigger these workflows. Um, but as it stands right now, that's not something that's possible. How do you stop a workflow once it's running, e.g. before the second stage of it activates? Great question. Let me pull up one. Let me see if I've got one here that's got a run history. So when it's actually running, we can go into this quote chase. So this is obviously going to show us one that's been sent. But on the quote record itself, you're able to pause it. It's going to be a little tricky for me without an example here to demonstrate, but on the quote record itself, you're able to sort of pause that process from going through. So I can't demonstrate it exactly on this test profile, but I hope that answers the question. Um, when will additional workflow options be available outside of these? I believe, Lisa, the plan is for these to be implemented in not the next version that's coming out, but the one after that. So it should be, I believe, about 6 weeks or so. And again, that's going to be very, very vague. And I'm not certain that this will be applying to other entities as well, just that it'll be able to trigger on different, status changes rather than just created um, and closed, that sort of thing. For quote chasers, is there a way to add a filter that allows you to put an exclusion criteria in? So at the moment, there is no filter on the quote chasers, as far as I'm aware. As I demonstrated, it's just for the, we can head in and demonstrate. So it's just for these certain templates that are going to be sent out, not the same filters as we've got for the other ones. But I could absolutely see the use case for that. So you want to have it only go out for certain quotes, even if they're using a certain template. But at the same time, you could recreate the same templates that you're using at the moment, or a slightly different one for these certain exclusion templates, sorry, exclusion cases, and then send them that quote template instead, just so that it goes and then triggers that workflow, if that makes sense. It's sort of a bit of a workaround, but I'll take that feedback and feed that through to the team so they might see if they can add that in at a future time. Is there a way of linking quotes between Unleashed and CRM? Sorry, Caitlin, I don't quite follow, other than the fact that obviously when they're confirmed through the CRM, they'll be pushed through to Unleashed anyway, at the moment, using the integration between the two. but it's not going to be sending any emails or any additional information through to Unleashed based on that, anything from the automation workflow, just from the regular integration. For the filter on quote chases based on value, yeah, as I mentioned, for a similar question a minute or two ago, it's the similar way where there isn't a way to filter it at the moment, but you could obviously set up a different quote template to send for that to trigger it. But as this has been obviously a question asked by a couple of people now, I'll definitely feed that back as an improvement we can add to this feature before it comes out of preview, so that you can add a filter for quotes as well. Then obviously, once you can filter a quote on it for any reason at all, then you'd be able to add it for the value on that quote that's set. So that way, it's only going to trigger for high value quotes in an example. Where do you need to set up when a customer replies that it updates the quote chaser workflow? So it automatically will do that if the customer marks the quote as confirmed. So using the quote chasers, it's going to go through and it's going to send the customer that email that has the button to it's designed to be used using email templates that have the option for the customer to confirm their own quotes using that built-in option in the email templates. So if that is clicked, that's going to automatically go through and confirm that quote and then stop the email process from going. And if we send a quote via Unleashed, will that automatically link with the CRM and enter the workflows? So no, I'm afraid it won't, Caitlin. If the quote is sent via Unleashed, we'll import the order back into the CRM, but as it won't be an email sending out from the CRM at the moment, there will be no, as that's the only trigger for these quote chasers. As there's no email being sent, it's not going to trigger that. There's no automation workflow for order creation. I imagine you'd end up with quite a few triggering from the integration, and it would end up potentially with duplicates, as it would be, if you had it on a quote chase, you send an email when we created it in CRM, and then when we imported it back from Unleashed, you may end up triggering it again. So there's no way for it to do anything that we get in from an account system, just information that's active in the CRM. Are there any actions that we can update fields in the CRM other than tags and tasks? For example, if the quote chaser sends to the customer twice and there's been no response, we change the pipeline. There is not a way to do that at the moment. Again, happy to feed that back and add that into potentially a future plan. But as it stands, the only information that we sort of are changing is by adding new tasks or tags to these through the automation workflows to let users know that, this quote isn't being responded to and it might need its pipeline changed. But I can absolutely see the reason why you'd want to do that automatically. And I'll feed that back and see if that's something that we can add into a future version. Can we set up an automation email for balances due in the CRM? That's a great question. As it stands, these are only for problems being created and opportunities. So right now, that's not going to be an option. I guess it would have to come down to how we're going to automatically get that information that the balances are due. Obviously, you could create a problem record for it, but then that sort of defeats the purpose of the automation. Um, I think as I would need a better example, Mark, of how we'd want to properly set that up. Um, but as it stands, that's not a feature. But if you'd logged an idea for that or sort of gave some more information to the team, I'm sure we could feed that back as another way to add this into potentially add this into a future version. If a quote chase automation is active and a quote then becomes an order manually by pressing the to confirm in prospect, stops your automation workflow. Yes, if the quote is confirmed, it's going to stop the automation from emailing. If the quote is confirmed, it's not going to keep chasing it out. Hope that clears that up. So it's designed for the customer to do it through the emails, but I'm very confident that if you confirm it yourself through the CRM manually rather than the customer doing it, it's still going to stop those emails from going out. If that's not the case. It definitely should be, and I'll make sure that that's how it works going forward. So I'll feed that back to the team. Um, any other questions about this at all? Feel free to drop it in the chat or in the Q&A. How is the automation scheduled? Will the reports constantly run? So, as in, how is it scheduled to do what? Sorry, Angela. It's going to be checking constant. So when the something is created or closed, obviously that's going to be triggering. At that point, the automation is going to be aware of that change. So when if a new record is created, it's going to send that through to the automation, so it's going to immediately pick up on that. There should be no delay. Same thing with any other changes, and same thing with the quote email. It's triggering off of that quote email being sent, so it does sort of constantly go. If you're talking to how the processes within the workflow are automated, you can add those delays yourself, but by default, I believe they'll all go back to back as quick as they can. So it should be very quick. Sorry if I've not managed to answer that one. If I've not quite understood it, please feel free to clarify. I'd happily give it another go. Are these automations more efficient than Task Center? The Task Center ones, obviously being uh, older and somewhat more bespoke, can have these can do more things at the moment than these new features. I think they might be more efficient in the sense that they don't require that on-premise setup, and they're not going to rely on a third-party or sort of second-party system like Task Center to function for it. Um, it's quite six one, half a dozen the other really at the moment. But once we get more features into the workflows and add status changes and add this action, this feedback, I think it will end up being an easier to use solution for sure as well. But it still may end up being that Task Center is a better fit for you, just based on what the configurations that you've got at the moment still may not be possible within the automation workflows. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope that this has been a good demonstration to share what this new feature will be for the CRM and sort of where you'll be able to set this up and play around with this. It should be in the CRM now if you want to have a test with the current features, but obviously there'll be more changes coming soon to this feature, just adding more ability to add changes. Um, you'll be able to get this webinar at prospectsoft.com/resources/webinars, and it'll be up on our YouTube page as well in a short time. Thank you all very much for attending. That's been all from me today. Any other questions about this moving forwards, feel free to ask our chatbot an email, sorry, a question about this, or drop me an email, and we can try our best to help answer any questions. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Goodbye.